Imagine standing in a ballroom filled with the city's elite, judges, CEOs, socialites, on the most important night of your life. The cameras are flashing, the champagne is flowing, and you feel like Cinderella. Then, in a split second, the music stops. You see a hand moving in slow motion, and suddenly, the world goes dark and sticky. Your mother-in-law didn't just ruin the party, she just declared war. But what she didn't know was that her son, the billionaire she thought she controlled, was holding a microphone, and a secret that would burn her legacy to the ground. This is the story of Layla and the Sterling family. The invitation was heavy, embossed with gold leaf on cream cardstock, weighing more than a standard paperback book. It read, Sterling Enterprises Charity Gala and the 30th birthday celebration of Mrs. Layla Sterling. To the outside world, Layla Sterling had won the lottery of life. At 29, she was married to Alexander Sterling, the 34-year-old CEO of Sterling Global, a conglomerate with fingers in everything from shipping logistics in the Atlantic to tech startups in Silicon Valley. Alexander was handsome in that sharp, brooding way that made magazine editors swoon. Dark hair, piercing blue eyes, and a jawline that looked like it could cut glass. But more importantly, he was kind. Or at least, he tried to be. But to Layla, the invitation didn't look like a celebration. It looked like a summons. "Do I really have to wear the red one?" Layla asked, standing in the middle of her walk-in closet. The space was larger than the apartment she had grown up in back in Ohio. Her mother-in-law, Catherine Sterling, didn't turn around. She was busy inspecting a row of designer heels, tapping a manicured fingernail against a pair of Louboutins. Catherine was 60, but thanks to a team of Swiss surgeons and a diet of kale and spite, she looked a frozen 45. "Red is the color of power, Layla, and considering you have none of your own, you'll need to borrow some from the dress," Catherine said, her voice smooth like velvet wrapped around a razor blade. She finally turned, her eyes scanning Layla with a look of mild disgust. Alexander needs a wife who commands the room, not a mouse who hides in the corner. Tonight is crucial for the merger with the DuPont family. Do not embarrass us. Layla swallowed the lump in her throat. It had been 3 years of this. 3 years of snide comments about her public school education, her pedestrian taste in art, and her inability to produce an heir within the first 18 months of marriage. "Alex said I could wear the blue silk," Layla tried, her voice trembling slightly. Catherine stepped closer, invading Layla's personal space. She smelled of expensive tuberose perfume and cold ambition. "Alexander is a brilliant businessman, but he has a blind spot. He thinks you're a diamond in the rough. I know you're just a piece of glass trying to catch the light. You will wear the red. And you will smile. And when the cake comes out, you will stand exactly where I tell you." Layla nodded, defeated. It was easier to surrender than to fight a war she was ill-equipped to win. Downstairs, the Sterling estate, a sprawling manor in the Hamptons, was already buzzing with staff. Caterers were setting up ice sculptures. Florists were arranging thousands of white orchids. It was excessive, gaudy, and entirely Catherine's vision. Layla found Alexander in his study, reviewing contracts. He looked up, his face softening instantly when he saw her. "Hey," he said, standing up and walking over to wrap his arms around her. "You look tense." "Mother?" Layla buried her face in his chest, breathing in his scent of sandalwood and clean linen. "She hates me, Alex. She's bringing out the big guns tonight. She invited the DuPonts." Alexander stiffened slightly. "It's business, Layla. Just business. Once this merger is done, I promise, we're taking that trip to Amalfi. Just you and me. No phones, no galas, no mother." She's making me wear the red dress, Layla whispered. Alexander pulled back, looking into her eyes. You'd look beautiful in a burlap sack, Layla. Let her play her games. She's lonely. Since Dad died, the company and these parties are all she has. Just endure it for me. One last night. One last night, Layla repeated. If she had known what the night would actually hold, she would have run out the back door, jumped into her Honda Civic, and never looked back. The gala began at 7:15 p.m. sharp. The driveway was a parade of Rolls-Royces and Bentleys. Layla stood by Alexander's side at the entrance, her smile plastered on so tight her cheeks ached. She shook hands with senators, tech moguls, and old money matriarchs who looked at her like she was a stain on the rug. Charming, one woman said, looking Layla up and down. So, refreshing to see Alexander marry for love. Usually, men in his position marry for strategy. Thank you, Layla said, gritting her teeth. Catherine was everywhere, holding court. She wore a silver gown that made her look like a queen, and she introduced Layla to guests with a distinctive pause. And this is Layla, Alexander's wife. The pause did all the heavy lifting, implying that Layla was an unfortunate accessory Alexander had picked up at a garage sale. Around 9:00 p.m., the atmosphere shifted, the lights dimmed, a spotlight hit the center of the ballroom. Ladies and gentlemen, Catherine's voice boomed over the microphone. She stood on the stage, beaming. Tonight isn't just about charity. It is about family. It is about celebrating the woman who has entered our lives and changed things. My daughter-in-law, Layla. The crowd applauded politely. Alexander squeezed Layla's hand. See? She's trying, he whispered. Layla wasn't so sure. She felt a cold prickle of dread on the back of her neck. Layla, darling, come up here, Catherine beckoned. Layla walked up the stairs, her red dress rustling. She felt exposed, vulnerable. And now, Catherine announced, her eyes gleaming with a manic sort of joy, the cake. We spared no expense. A massive cart was wheeled out. On it sat a 5-tier cake, a masterpiece of fondant and sugarwork, decorated with edible gold leaf. It was magnificent. Make a wish, darling, Catherine said, handing Layla a silver knife. Layla leaned in to blow out the single ceremonial candle. As she took a breath, she saw Catherine's hand move. It wasn't a gesture of affection. It was a shove. But it wasn't just a shove. Catherine grabbed the back of Layla's head with a grip like iron. In front of 300 of the most powerful people in New York, Catherine Sterling slammed Layla's face directly into the middle tier of the cake. The sound was wet and sickening, a muffled thwack as Layla's face decimated the red velvet and buttercream structure. For a heartbeat, there was absolute silence. The band stopped playing. The chatter ceased. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioning and the gasp of 300 guests. Layla pulled back, gasping for air. Her eyes were stinging, blinded by frosting. She couldn't see, but she could hear. She could hear the sudden, sharp intake of breath from the crowd. She could feel the sticky, heavy weight of the cake sliding down her neck, ruining the red dress, matting her hair. She wiped her eyes frantically, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. Catherine was standing next to her, not looking apologetic. She was looking at the crowd, her face twisted into a mask of mock horror that didn't reach her cold, dead eyes. Oh, my goodness!" Catherine cried out, her voice pitching up theatrically. "Oh, you clumsy girl! Look what you've done!" Layla stood frozen, frosting dripping from her chin. You pushed me," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "Pushed you?" Catherine laughed, a harsh, barking sound. She turned to the microphone, addressing the room. "Did you hear that? She says I pushed her. Ladies and gentlemen, I think our birthday girl has had a little too much champagne before dinner. Just like her mother used to, from what I hear." The insult was a low blow. Layla's mother was a recovering alcoholic, a fact Layla had told Alexander in confidence, a fact Catherine must have dug up. "Mom!" Alexander's voice cut through the room. He was running up the stairs now. "Stay back, Alexander!" Catherine commanded, holding up a hand. She reached into her clutch and pulled out a stack of photographs. "You need to see this before you comfort her. You all need to see this." Layla wiped more cake from her eyes, her vision blurring with tears of humiliation. "What are you doing?" Catherine threw the photos into the air. They fluttered down like confetti, landing on the stage and the front tables. Guests scrambled to pick them up. Gasps rippled through the room. Layla looked down at one that had landed near her feet. It was a grainy photo. It showed a woman who looked like her. Same hair, same build, sitting at a cafe table, holding hands with a man who wasn't Alexander. "I hired a private investigator 6 months ago," Catherine announced, her voice triumphantly projecting to the back of the room. "I knew she wasn't right for you, Alexander. I knew she was a gold digger. But I didn't know she was a cheater. That man in the photo is her ex-boyfriend from Ohio, Caleb Miller. She's been funneling your money to him, Alexander. That's why she hasn't given you an heir. She's on birth control and planning her exit strategy." The room erupted into whispers. The judgment was palpable. Layla looked at Alexander. He was standing 5 feet away, holding one of the photographs. His face was unreadable. He was staring at the image of the woman holding hands with another man. "Alex," Layla pleaded, stepping toward him, her hand outstretched. "That's not me. You know that's not me. I haven't seen Caleb in 10 years. That photo is faked, or it's someone else. Please." Alexander didn't move. He didn't look at her. He looked at the photo, then at his mother. "The timestamps don't lie, Alexander," Catherine hissed, stepping closer to her son. "Last Tuesday, while you were in Tokyo, she said she was going to a spa day. She was at a Motel 6 in Jersey with this mechanic." "Alex, please," Layla cried, the tears now cutting tracks through the frosting on her face. "I was at the spa. Check the receipts. Your mother is lying." Alexander finally looked up. His blue eyes were cold, empty. "You embarrassed my family," Alexander said. His voice was quiet, but in the silent ballroom, it carried. Layla felt her heart shatter. "Alex!" "Get her out of here," Alexander said, turning his back on her. Catherine smiled, a wide, predatory grin. She signaled to the security guards. "You heard him. Escort the trash out, and send the bill for the cake to her trailer park." 2 burly security guards in black suits stepped onto the stage. One grabbed Layla's arm, hard. "Let go of me!" Layla screamed, the fight finally kicking in. "I didn't do anything. This is a setup." "Don't make a scene, Mom," the guard grunted, dragging her toward the side exit. As she was hauled away, slipping on the slick floor, Layla looked back one last time. She saw the guests staring at her with pity and disgust. She saw Catherine adjusting her diamond bracelet, looking satisfied. And she saw Alexander. He was standing with his back to her, pouring himself a glass of scotch from the bar cart on the stage. He didn't turn around. He didn't look back. The heavy metal doors of the service exit slammed shut behind her, throwing her into the cool night air of the parking lot. She was covered in sticky red velvet cake, humiliated, accused of adultery, and abandoned by the only man she had ever loved. Layla sank to her knees on the asphalt and screamed. But inside the ballroom, the drama wasn't over. In fact, the real show was just beginning. Inside the ballroom, The murmur of the crowd was like the buzzing of a disturbed hornet's nest. Catherine Sterling smoothed her silver dress and took the microphone again. She was in her element. She had won. She had excised the cancer from her family. "I apologize, everyone," Catherine said, her voice dripping with faux sincerity. "It is a mother's burden to protect her cubs, even when they are grown men. I tried to warn Alexander, but love is blind. Luckily, a mother's eyes are always open. Please, let's not let one bad apple spoil the evening. The band will resume, and dessert, fresh dessert, will be served shortly." She gestured to the conductor to start the music. She turned to Alexander, who was still standing by the bar cart, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "You did the right thing, son," Catherine said, walking over to him and placing a hand on his shoulder. "It hurts now, I know. But in a month, you'll thank me. I've already contacted the lawyers. We can have the prenup enforced by morning. She gets nothing. Obviously, infidelity voids the spousal support clause." Alexander didn't answer. He took a slow sip of his drink. "Alexander," Catherine pressed, "don't sulk. You need to mingle. The DuPonts are watching. Show them you're strong. Show them you aren't broken by a little girl from Ohio." Alexander set the glass down on the table with a sharp clink. He reached into his tuxedo pocket and pulled out a handkerchief. He wiped his hands, which were shaking slightly. Then he reached into his other pocket and pulled out a small, black remote control. "Alexander, what are you doing?" Catherine asked, her brow furrowing. Alexander walked past her. He didn't walk toward the guests. He walked toward the stage where the large projector screen was set up, the one intended to show a montage of Layla's life, which Catherine had conveniently forgotten to prepare. Alexander signaled the AV booth. The music cut out again. "Alexander," Catherine hissed, "stop this. You're making it worse." Alexander walked to the microphone stand his mother had just vacated. He adjusted the height. He looked out at the crowd. His expression had changed. The cold emptiness was gone. In its place was a burning, terrifying rage that was all the more scary because it was completely controlled. "I'd like your attention, please," Alexander said. His voice was steady, deep, and commanded instant obedience. The room went silent again. "My mother," Alexander began, gesturing to Catherine, who stood frozen a few feet away, "is a remarkable woman. She believes in protection. She believes in family. And she believes in truth." Catherine relaxed slightly, a smug smile returning to her face. He was going to thank her. Of course he was. "She also believes," Alexander continued, "that I am an idiot." A ripple of confused laughter went through the crowd. Catherine's smile faltered. "She believes I didn't know about the private investigator she hired," Alexander said, "but I did. Because I pay for the security detail that logs every visitor to this estate. I knew about the PI 6 months ago." Alexander pressed a button on the remote. The massive screen behind him flickered to life. It wasn't a montage of Layla. It was a video recording, grainy, black and white, but high definition enough to be clear. It showed the interior of a car. Catherine was sitting in the back seat. Beside her was a man with a camera. Audio crackled over the ballroom speakers. "I don't care how you do it," Catherine's voice rang out, clear as day. "Photoshop, a look-alike, I don't care. I want pictures of her with another man. Use that ex-boyfriend of hers, the mechanic. Find someone who looks like him. I want Layla out of this house before the fiscal year ends." The crowd gasped. It was a collective sound of shock. Catherine's face went white. This is deep fake. This is AI, she shrieked, rushing toward Alexander. "Turn it off." Alexander sidestepped her smoothly. He pressed the button again. The screen changed. It was a bank statement. A wire transfer from a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands. "This," Alexander narrated, "is a transfer of $500,000 from the Sterling Family Trust. It was sent last week." He clicked again. The screen showed the recipient. Recipient: J. Pearsall, Deep Fake and Digital Manipulation Services. "You paid $500,000 to frame my wife," Alexander said, looking at his mother with pure disgust. "And you didn't even do a good job. The woman in your fake photo? She's wearing a watch on her right wrist. Leigh is left-handed. She never wears a watch on her right." Catherine was trembling. "Alexander, I did it for you. She's not one of us. She was dragging you down." "Dragging me down?" Alexander laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Layla is the only reason I haven't quit this family. She's the only thing that made this bearable." He turned back to the crowd. "But that's not all." "Alexander, stop!" Catherine screamed, lunging for the remote. He caught her wrist in mid-air. "No, Mother. We're done hiding." He clicked the remote one more time. The screen filled with a PDF document. It was a scanned copy of a last will and testament. "This is my father's will," Alexander said. "The real one. Not the one my mother filed with the courts." The room went deathly silent. This was no longer just family drama. This was a crime. "My father left 51% of Sterling Global to me," Alexander said, "and 49% to charity. He left my mother a stipend and the house. But somehow, after he died, a different will appeared, one that gave Mother controlling interest, and me a minority stake until I turned 35. I always wondered how that happened." Alexander looked at the DuPont family in the front row. "Mr. DuPont, you're a lawyer. What is the penalty for forging a will and probating a fraudulent document in the state of New York?" Mr. DuPont stood up slowly, adjusting his glasses. He looked at Catherine, then at Alexander. "That would be a felony, Alexander. Fraud, forgery, and grand larceny." Catherine looked like she was going to faint. She looked around the room for allies, but everyone was recoiling from her. "I found the original will in your safe, Mother," Alexander said softly. "I've already sent copies to the district attorney and to the board of directors." You wouldn't," Catherine whispered. "I'm your mother." "And she was my wife," Alexander roared, his voice finally breaking with the rage he had been suppressing. "She was the woman I love, and you smashed her face into a cake and threw her out like garbage." He turned to the security guards who were still standing by the exit, looking confused and terrified. "Go find my wife," Alexander ordered. "Bring her back. Now. And you," he pointed at Catherine, "get out of my house." "Your house?" Catherine spat, trying to regain some dignity. "This is the Sterling estate, which, according to the real will, belongs to me," Alexander said. "You have 1 hour to pack your bags. If you're not gone, I'm having you escorted out by the same guards you used on Layla." Alexander threw the microphone onto the floor. The feedback screeched through the room. He didn't wait for the applause, or the shock, or the police. He jumped off the stage and sprinted toward the exit doors, bursting into the night. "Layla!" he screamed into the darkness. "Layla!" But the parking lot was empty. The Honda Civic was gone. Layla had listened to him. She had run. And Alexander realized with a sinking pit in his stomach that clearing her name was the easy part. Getting her to forgive him for playing the role of the villain, even for 10 minutes, might be impossible. The highway was a blur of red taillights and blinding white high beams. Layla gripped the steering wheel of her Honda Civic so tightly her knuckles were white, contrasting sharply with the dried, crusty red frosting that stained her hands. She was shivering violently. The adrenaline that had propelled her out of the ballroom and into the car was fading, replaced by a cold, hollow shock. Every time she blinked, she saw the flash of cameras. Every time she swallowed, she tasted the cloying, chemical sweetness of the fondant. She didn't know where she was going. She just drove west, away from the Hamptons, away from the ocean, away from the life she had tried so desperately to fit into. Her phone, tossed onto the passenger seat, had been buzzing incessantly for the last 20 minutes. Alexander. Then Alexander. Then unknown number. Then Alexander again. "Stop it," she sobbed, grabbing the phone and holding the power button down until the screen went black. She couldn't hear his voice. If she heard his voice, she might turn around, and if she turned around, she would hate herself forever. He had stood there. He had watched. For a solid minute, while the world laughed at her, while his mother humiliated her, Alexander had stood there like a statue. It didn't matter if he had a plan. It didn't matter if he was waiting for the perfect moment to play his video. In that moment, he had chosen revenge against his mother over the dignity of his wife. He had used Layla as bait. She was a prop, a pawn in a game between billionaires. Layla's vision blurred with tears. She wiped them away, smearing red dye across her cheek. She needed to stop. She was a hazard on the road. She pulled off the highway at the first exit she saw. It was a run-down strip of New Jersey industrial wasteland. Gas stations with flickering lights, 24-hour diners, and motels that rented rooms by the hour. She pulled into the parking lot of the Starlight Motor Inn. The neon sign buzzed ominously, the L flickering on and off. It was the kind of place Catherine Sterling wouldn't let her dog urinate in. It was perfect. Layla walked into the lobby. The night manager, a man with a grease-stained shirt and tired eyes, looked up from a small TV. He did a double take. Layla knew what she looked like. She was wearing a ruined couture red gown, covered in cake, her makeup running, her hair a bird's nest of frosting. She looked like the survivor of a pastry shop explosion. "Rough night?" the manager asked, not unkindly. "You have no idea," Layla whispered. She slapped her credit card on the counter. "One room, please. I don't care which one." $40. Cash is better if you don't want a paper trail, he said, eyeing her card. Layla realized she didn't have cash. She nodded at the card. "Just run it." He handed her a physical metal key attached to a plastic diamond tag. "Room 104. Around the back." Layla stumbled to the room. It smelled of stale tobacco and lemon pledge. She locked the door, threw the deadbolt, and latched the chain. Then she walked into the bathroom and stared at herself in the mirror. She looked monstrous. The red velvet cake had stained her skin like blood. It was in her eyelashes, her ears, down the front of her dress. She turned on the shower, not bothering to wait for the water to warm up. She stepped in, fully clothed. As the cold water hit her, the red dye began to run off the dress, swirling down the drain in a pink and crimson vortex. Layla slid down the tiled wall until she was sitting in the tub, hugging her knees, rocking back and forth. Meanwhile, 70 miles away, the Sterling estate was a crime scene. Alexander ignored the police officers who were reading Catherine her rights. He ignored Mr. DuPont, who was trying to shake his hand and congratulate him on bold leadership. "Get out of my way," Alexander snarled, pushing past a detective. He walked to his chief of security, a former Navy SEAL named Silas. "Did you find her?" Silas looked at his tablet. "She turned her phone off, sir. But before she did, the GPS pinged a cell tower off exit 9 on the I-95. "Get the car," Alexander ordered. "Sir, the police need a statement regarding the forgery," Silas warned. "And the press is at the gate. If you leave now, it looks like fleeing." "My mother is the criminal. I'm the victim. Layla is the victim," Alexander snapped. "I don't care about the press. I care about my wife. If I don't get to her tonight, Silas, I might never get her back." Silas nodded solemnly. "The Ferrari is out front." Alexander jumped into the driver's seat of his black Ferrari 812. He didn't wait for Silas. He floored the gas, the tires screeching on the cobblestones as he tore out of the estate, swerving around the news vans that were blocking the driveway. He drove like a madman. He hit 120 miles per hour on the open highway, his mind replaying the look on Layla's face. "She looked at me," he thought, gripping the leather steering wheel. "She looked at me for help, and I looked away." He told himself it was necessary. He told himself that to destroy Catherine completely, he had to let her play her hand. He had to let her feel safe enough to reveal the depth of her malice in front of the witnesses. If he had stepped in too early, Catherine would have spun it. She would have played the victim. He needed the cake smash. He needed the humiliation to be absolute so that his retaliation could be absolute. But now, staring at the empty highway, the victory felt like ash in his mouth. He had won the company. He had destroyed his mother's reputation, but he had sacrificed Layla's heart to do it. "I'll fix it," he said aloud to the empty car. "I can fix anything." It was the arrogance of a billionaire, and he was about to learn that some things cannot be bought and some stains don't wash out. It took Alexander 45 minutes to find the Starlight Motor Inn. It was the only lodging near the cell tower Ping that was open. He parked the Ferrari next to a rusted pickup truck. The contrast was laughable. He stepped out, his tuxedo jacket discarded in the car, his white dress shirt unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up. He walked to the front desk. The manager looked up again. "I'm looking for a woman," Alexander said, slapping a $100 bill onto the counter. "She came in about an hour ago. Red dress. Distressed." The manager looked at the money, then at Alexander. "You the husband?" "Yes." "She looked like she went through hell, buddy." "Room 104. Alexander didn't wait for change. He ran around the back of the building. He found room 104. The lights were off, but he could hear the faint sound of running water. He knocked. "Layla?" No answer. "Layla, open the door. It's Alex." Silence. "Layla, I have the master key from the manager, but I don't want to use it. Please." Still nothing. Panic flared in his chest. What if she hurt herself? What if the shock was too much? "I'm coming in," he announced. He didn't have a key. He lied. He took a step back and kicked the door right below the lock. The cheap wood frame splintered instantly. The door swung open with a bang. "Layla!" He rushed inside. The room was empty, but the bathroom door was ajar. Steam and the sound of the shower filled the air. He pushed the bathroom door open. The sight stopped him, dead in his tracks. Layla was sitting in the tub, the shower curtain pulled back. She was still wearing the sodden, ruined red dress. The water raining down on her was clear, but the water swirling around her legs was pink. She was scrubbing her arms with a washcloth, scrubbing so hard the skin was raw and red, trying to get the sticky sugar and the feeling of Catherine's hands off her. She didn't scream when she saw him. She just looked up. Her mascara had run down her face in black tear tracks, mixing with the red dye. She looked like a tragic painting. "Get out," she said. Her voice was hoarse. Alexander fell to his knees beside the tub, ignoring the water soaking his dress pants. "Layla, baby, I'm so sorry. I'm here. You're safe." He reached out to touch her arm. Layla flinched as if he had burned her. "Don't touch me. Do not touch me." Alexander recoiled, his hands hovering in the air. "Layla, please. I handled it." Did you see? I exposed her. I destroyed her. She's going to jail, Layla. She can never hurt you again." Layla stopped scrubbing. She looked at him with eyes that were terrifyingly clear. "You think that makes it okay?" "I did it for us," Alexander pleaded. "I had to let her think she won. I had to let her play the video and the photos so I could prove they were fake in real time. If I had stopped her before the cake, she would have just tried again next week. I had to end it." "You used me," Layla said, her voice trembling. "You knew she was going to do it. You knew about the cake." Alexander hesitated. That hesitation was all the answer she needed. I suspected she would do something dramatic," Alexander admitted quietly. "I didn't know she would get physical. I swear, Alex, if I knew she would touch you, I would have killed her." "But you knew she was going to humiliate me," Layla said, standing up in the tub. The heavy, wet dress clung to her body, weighing her down. She stepped out onto the bath mat, dripping water and red dye onto the linoleum. "You knew she was going to call me a whore in front of everyone, and you let it happen. You let me stand there, terrified, thinking my husband believed I was a cheater. I never believed it." Alexander stood up too, towering over her. "I knew about the PI for months. I was building the case." "Then why didn't you tell me?" Layla screamed, poking him in the chest. "Why didn't you warn me? We could have done it together. We could have taken her down as a team. But you didn't trust me. You wanted to be the hero. You wanted the big reveal." She was right. The realization hit Alexander like a physical blow. He had treated this like a corporate takeover, holding his cards close to his chest, not realizing that his wife wasn't an asset to be managed. She was a human being. "I wanted to protect you from the stress," he said weakly. "Protect me?" Layla laughed, a hysterical, broken sound. "You threw me to the wolves, Alexander, and then you waited until they took a few bites before you shot them." She walked past him into the main room, shivering. She grabbed a towel and wrapped it around her shoulders. "I want a divorce." The words hung in the musty air of the motel room. "No," Alexander said immediately. "No. You're in shock. You don't mean that." "I mean it," Layla said. "I can't be with a man who watches his mother assault me and calculates the ROI of waiting 5 minutes to intervene. I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you," Alexander vowed. He stepped toward her, his eyes burning with intensity. "We are going to Italy, tonight. The jet is fueling up. We go to Amalfi. We stay there for as long as you want. I'll buy you a villa. I'll burn Sterling Global to the ground if you want me to." "I don't want your money, Alex. I never wanted your money," Layla cried. Suddenly, Layla swayed. Her face, already pale, went ashen. She reached out to grab the edge of the dresser to steady herself. "Layla?" Alexander moved to catch her. "I feel," Layla muttered. Her eyes rolled back. She collapsed. Alexander caught her before she hit the floor, scooping her up into his arms. She was freezing cold, yet sweating. "Layla! Layla, wake up!" He tapped her cheek. She was unresponsive. Panic, real and primal, seized him. This wasn't just shock. He kicked the motel door open again, carrying her bridal style out into the parking lot. He didn't care about the Ferrari's leather seats. He placed her gently in the passenger side and buckled her in. He pulled his phone out and dialed 911, then cancelled it. The ambulance would take too long. He dialed the nearest private hospital, one that the Sterling Foundation funded. "This is Alexander Sterling," he barked into the phone as he started the engine. "I'm coming in with a medical emergency. Level 1 trauma. Have a team ready at the entrance. ETA 10 minutes. He peeled out of the parking lot. 20 minutes later, Alexander was pacing the hallway of the VIP wing at Lenox Hill Hospital. His shirt was stained pink from holding her. He looked like he had murdered someone. A doctor, a grey-haired woman named Dr. Orris, stepped out of Layla's room. She looked grave. "Is she okay?" Alexander demanded, rushing to her. "Is it a concussion? From the impact?" "She has a mild concussion, yes," Dr. Orris said. "And she is severely dehydrated and in a state of acute emotional shock. We've given her a sedative." Alexander exhaled, leaning against the wall. "Thank God, she just needs rest." "Mr. Sterling," Dr. Orris said, her tone shifting. "There is something else. We ran a standard blood panel when she arrived." Alexander looked up. "What is it?" "We found high levels of synthetic hormones in her system, specifically a drug called Lupron. It's often used to treat endometriosis, but in high doses, it suppresses ovulation. It mimics menopause." Alexander frowned. "Layla isn't on medication. We've been trying to conceive for 2 years. The doctor said she had unexplained infertility." Dr. Orris shook her head. "It's not unexplained, Mr. Sterling. Someone has been dosing her. Based on the levels, she's been ingesting this for at least 18 months, likely hidden in food or drink she consumes daily." Alexander felt the world tilt. Kale and spite. Catherine. Catherine had been sending Layla health smoothies every morning from the main house kitchen. She claimed it was to help her prepare for pregnancy. She had been poisoning her. She had been chemically sterilizing her own daughter-in-law to prevent an heir, all while mocking her for being barren. A rage darker than anything he had felt in the ballroom consumed him. This wasn't just drama. This was bodily harm. "But there is a complication," Dr. Orris continued, looking down at her clipboard. "What complication?" Alexander asked, his voice dead. "The dosing must have stopped recently, or perhaps she missed a few weeks while you were traveling," Dr. Orris said. She looked at Alexander with a mixture of professional detachment and pity. "Mr. Sterling, your wife is pregnant. She's about 6 weeks along. But with the stress, the trauma, and the chemical residue in her system, it is a high-risk pregnancy. Extremely high risk. If she wakes up and continues to be in this state of distress, she will likely lose the baby." Alexander stared at the doctor. Pregnant. They had wanted this for years, and now, at the moment his marriage was crumbling, the miracle had happened. "Can I see her?" Alexander whispered. "She's sleeping," Dr. Orris said. "But Mr. Sterling, if you go in there, you need to be the source of calm. If she wakes up and you fight, I cannot guarantee the safety of the pregnancy." Alexander nodded. He walked into the room slowly. Layla looked small in the hospital bed, the IV line running into her arm. Her face was scrubbed clean of the cake, leaving her skin pale and translucent. Alexander sat in the chair next to the bed. He took her hand, the one without the ring, because she had taken it off at the motel and left it on the nightstand. He had it in his pocket. "I'm going to fix this," he whispered to her sleeping form. "I'm going to bury my mother for this, and I'm going to save us." But as he sat there, his phone buzzed. It was a notification from the New York Post. Breaking. Cake Wars. Sterling Gala ends in disaster. Video shows Layla Sterling attacking mother-in-law. Sources say billionaire wife was drunk and belligerent. Alexander frowned and opened the article. Catherine wasn't in jail. She had made bail, and she had a better PR team. The video circulating online wasn't the full clip. It was edited. It started after the shove, showing only Layla flailing and screaming at Catherine, looking deranged. The angle made it look like Layla had lunged at the cake herself in a drunken rage. The narrative was shifting. To the public, Alexander's speech about the forgery hadn't leaked yet. The internet only saw a crazy, ungrateful wife ruining a charity gala. Alexander looked at Layla's peaceful face. The war wasn't over. It had just moved to a new battlefield, and this time he couldn't hide his cards. He had to burn the whole deck. Alexander sat in the dim light of the hospital room, the blue glow of his phone illuminating his exhausted face. The internet was a cesspool. The hashtag #AnushCrazyLayla was trending on Twitter. Catherine's PR team had been busy. They had released a statement claiming Layla had a history of mental instability and substance abuse issues, citing her mother's alcoholism as genetic proof. They claimed the cake incident was Layla attacking Catherine, and Catherine acted in self-defense. It was a masterclass in gaslighting. Layla stirred in the bed. Her eyes fluttered open, adjusting to the dark room. "Alex," she croaked. Alexander was by her side in an instant, dropping the phone. "I'm here. Don't try to sit up." "The baby," she whispered, her hand moving instinctively to her stomach. Even in her unconscious state, she had heard the doctor. Or maybe she had just felt it, that deep, intuitive knowledge of a mother. "The baby is fighting," Alexander said, gripping her hand. "But you need to stay calm. High risk," the doctor said. "But Layla, we're going to have a baby." Tears leaked from the corners of her eyes. "Catherine, she'll try to take it. She'll say I'm unfit." "Catherine isn't taking anything ever again," Alexander said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous register. "Layla, the doctors found Lupron in your blood. High doses." Layla frowned, confused. "Lupron? I don't take—" "I know," Alexander interrupted gently. "It was in the smoothies, the fertility blend she had the kitchen staff send up to you every morning. She wasn't just being mean, Layla. She was sterilizing you. She was poisoning you to ensure you couldn't give me an heir so she could keep control of the trust fund." Layla stared at the ceiling as the horror washed over her. The nausea, the hot flashes, the missed cycles. She had thought it was stress. She had thought her body was failing her. "She poisoned me," Layla whispered. The realization hardened something inside her. The fear evaporated, replaced by a cold, diamond-hard resolve. "She tried to kill my child." "Yes," Alexander said. Layla squeezed his hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "Give me my phone." "Layla, no. The internet is—" "Give me my phone, Alexander," she commanded. It wasn't the voice of the mouse who wore the red dress because she was told to. It was the voice of a matriarch. Alexander handed it to her. "Turn on the lights," she said. He flipped the switch. Layla sat up, wincing at the dizziness, but pushing through it. She opened Instagram. She started a live video. "What are you doing?" Alexander asked, alarmed. "Winning," she said. The notification went out to her 50,000 followers, and within seconds, the viewer count skyrocketed as the algorithm picked it up. People wanted to see the crazy cake lady. Layla looked directly into the camera. She wore no makeup. Her hospital gown was plain. She looked pale, exhausted, and utterly raw. "Hi," Layla said. "You've all seen the video of the cake. You've read the stories my mother-in-law sold to the press. You think I'm crazy. You think I'm a gold digger." She took a deep breath. "My name is Layla Sterling. I am currently at Lenox Hill Hospital. I am pregnant. And I am fighting to keep this baby because for the last 18 months, Catherine Sterling has been poisoning my breakfast with synthetic hormones to sterilize me." The comment section went wild. Emojis of shock, skepticism, and horror flew up the screen. "I don't expect you to believe me," Layla continued, "but the police are currently collecting the Vitamix blender from the Sterling estate for residue testing. The doctors here have my blood panel results." And my husband." She turned the camera to Alexander. He looked straight into the lens, his face grim. "My mother is a criminal," Alexander said clearly. "She forged my father's will to steal the company. She hired a digital effects team to frame my wife for adultery. And she poisoned her own grandchild. We are releasing the full security footage from the ballroom in 5 minutes. Watch the hand. Watch her grab Layla's hair." Layla turned the camera back to herself. "This isn't just about a cake. This is about power. And I am done being powerless." She ended the stream. The silence in the room was heavy. "You realize you just started World War III, Alexander said, looking at her with awe. "Good," Layla replied, leaning back against the pillows. "Burn it down." Down in the hospital lobby, chaos was erupting. Catherine Sterling had arrived. She was flanked by 2 lawyers and a personal assistant. She was wearing a pristine white suit, playing the role of the concerned grandmother. She had tipped off the paparazzi that she was coming to check on her poor, unstable daughter-in-law. "I just want to see her," Catherine sobbed theatrically for the cameras flashing at the entrance. "We are so worried about her mental state." She marched toward the elevators. "Mrs. Sterling!" A voice boomed across the lobby. It wasn't a reporter. It was Detective Miller, accompanied by 2 uniformed officers. Catherine stopped, annoyed. "Officer, I am in a hurry. My family is in crisis." "Catherine Sterling," Detective Miller said, stepping forward with handcuffs in his belt. "You are under arrest." The paparazzi cameras went into a frenzy. "Arrest?" Catherine laughed nervously. "Don't be ridiculous. I own this city. What is the charge?" "Trespassing." "Forgery in the 1st degree," Miller listed, ticking them off on his fingers. "Grand larceny, wire fraud, and, as of 10 minutes ago, based on the toxicology report faxed to the DA, 3 counts of reckless endangerment and aggravated assault with a poisonous substance." Catherine's face fell. The mask slipped. That little brat is lying. She drugged herself." "We also have a statement from your head of housekeeping," Miller said. "She kept the empty vials, Mrs. Sterling. She was afraid you'd frame her, so she kept them in her locker. She just handed them over to us." The color drained from Catherine's face. She looked at the cameras, then at the elevator, realizing there was no way out. "Don't touch me!" she shrieked as the officer grabbed her wrists. "I am a Sterling. I demand to call the governor." "You can call him from booking," Miller said, snapping the cuffs on. As Catherine was dragged out of the hospital, kicking and screaming, the live feeds were broadcasting it to the world. Upstairs, Alexander and Layla watched on the TV mounted on the wall. Alexander didn't look happy. He just looked relieved. He walked over to the bed and sat down, burying his face in his hands. "It's over," he whispered. Layla stroked his hair. "Not yet. Now we have to rebuild." 6 months later. The Sterling estate looked different. The cold, imposing iron gates were still there, but the landscaping had changed. The rigid, geometric hedges that Catherine had favored were gone, replaced by wilder, more natural gardens. English roses, hydrangeas, and wildflowers grew in chaotic, colorful abundance. Inside, the transformation was even more profound. The Red Room, Catherine's intimidating parlor where she used to interrogate guests, had been gutted. It was now a nursery. The walls were painted a soft sage green. A crib made of reclaimed walnut wood stood in the center. Layla sat in a rocking chair by the window, her hand resting on her swollen belly. She was 8 months along. It had been a terrifying pregnancy. She had spent 3 months on strict bed rest, terrified that every cramp was the end. But the baby was strong. A fighter. "You okay?" Alexander leaned against the doorframe. He had traded his stiff 3-piece suits for a cashmere sweater and dark jeans. He looked younger, lighter. The lines of stress around his eyes had softened. "Just thinking," Layla said, "about the trial." The trial of the century, as the papers called it, had concluded 2 weeks ago. The evidence was overwhelming. The health smoothies laced with Lupron, the digital trail of the deepfake photos, the forged will hidden in the safe. It was a mountain of guilt. Catherine Sterling had been sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. The judge, a woman who didn't take kindly to poisoning pregnant women, had shown no leniency. Catherine's assets had been frozen and seized to pay restitution to Layla and to the shareholders she had defrauded. "She called again," Alexander said, walking over and sitting on the ottoman at Layla's feet. "From the prison. She wants a visit." Layla looked out the window at the garden. "What did you tell her?" "I didn't answer," Alexander said. "I blocked the number." Layla nodded. "Good. It wasn't a forgiveness story. Some things Layla had learned were unforgivable. You didn't have to make peace with the person who tried to destroy you. You just had to make peace with yourself. "I finalized the rebranding today," Alexander said, changing the subject. "Sterling Global is officially launching the Layla Initiative, a non-profit dedicated to victims of domestic financial abuse. We're funding shelters and legal aid for women who are trapped in marriages because they don't have the money to leave." Layla smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached her eyes. That's amazing, Alex." "It was your idea," he reminded her. "I'm just the checkbook." He placed his hand on her stomach. The baby kicked, a sharp, strong movement. "Whoa!" Alexander laughed. "He's got a strong kick. Maybe a soccer player? Or a karate master?" Layla joked. "Like his grandmother." They both laughed, but it was a little strained. The shadow of Catherine would always be there, a cautionary tale woven into their DNA. "I was thinking," Layla said softly, "about the cake." "Let's not," Alexander groaned. "I still can't look at red velvet." "No, listen," Layla said. "My birthday is next week." Alexander stiffened. "We don't have to do anything. We can just order pizza, hide under the covers." "No," Layla said firmly. "I want a party." Alexander looked at her, surprised. "Are you sure?" "Yes, but not here, and not with senators and judges." 1 week later, the backyard of the Sterling estate was filled with people. But it wasn't the elite. It was Layla's friends from her yoga class. It was the staff, the housekeeper who had saved the vials, the security guard Silas, the gardener. It was a mix of normal, kind people. There was a barbecue pit smoking with ribs and burgers. There was a cooler full of beer and soda. Music was playing from a simple Bluetooth speaker, not a live orchestra. And then it was time for the cake. Alexander walked out carrying a simple sheet cake from a local bakery. It was chocolate with white frosting. It read, "Happy Birthday, Layla," in clumsy blue icing. The crowd sang. Layla blew out the candles. "Speech!" someone yelled. Layla stood up. She wore a simple blue sundress that hugged her baby bump. She looked radiant. "I don't have a speech," Layla said, smiling. "I just have a thank you. To my husband, who learned that standing up for your family is more important than standing on a stage. And to me," she paused, looking around the garden, "for surviving," she finished. Alexander walked up to her. He cut a slice of cake. He put it on a paper plate and handed it to her. "I promise," he whispered, kissing her forehead, "to never, ever smash this in your face." Layla laughed. She took a forkful of cake and ate it. It was sweet, simple, and perfect. But then a wicked glint entered her eye. She looked at the frosting on her finger. She looked at Alexander's pristine cashmere sweater. "You know," Layla said, "it's supposed to be good luck." "Layla, don't," Alexander warned, backing away with a grin. "This is Kashmir." "Tradition is tradition," Layla yelled, and with a laugh that echoed through the Hamptons, she smeared a handful of chocolate frosting right onto Alexander's nose. The crowd cheered. Alexander laughed, grabbing a handful of cake himself. For the first time in 30 years, the Sterling estate wasn't a place of cold ambition and secrets. It was messy, it was loud, it was full of love. And miles away, in a cold concrete cell, Catherine Sterling sat alone, staring at a blank wall, realizing that she had indeed smashed the cake. But Layla had managed to have it, and eat it too. The gilded cage was broken, the birds were free, and the sky had never looked so blue. And that is the dramatic conclusion of Layla and the Sterling family saga. From a humiliation that shook high society, to a shocking revelation of poisoning and betrayal, Layla proved that dignity is something you fight for, not something you're given. Alexander learned the hard way that silence is complicity, but in the end, he chose his wife over his legacy. This story reminds us that even the most perfect lives on Instagram can hide dark, dangerous secrets. It asks a tough question. Could you forgive a husband who waited to save you just to get evidence? Or would you have walked away forever? Let me know in the comments what you would have done in Layla's shoes. If you enjoyed this roller coaster of a story, please smash that like button, pun intended, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching.